Hello all you wonderful people out there in YouTube land. Welcome to the Texas Special YouTube channel. And welcome to the first in a new end of the year video series. The 8 Days of Christmas. This video on this wonderful Christmas Eve morning, we're going to take a look at this here Bachmann HO Scale 282 USRA Light Mountain, decorated and lettered for Rock Island number 2319. So, first step is to get this DCC ready locomotive out of the box. Simple enough, you just pop open, move the flaps out of the way, pull the engine out of said box, also inside the box you will find the 90-day warranty information printed off in multiple languages. And an owner's manual with an exploded parts diagram. As well as the warranty validation card that you must fill out and mail within 10 days of purchase of this engine to validate the warranty. Now, to pull this engine out of the plastic cradle, you have this locking tab right here. Lift up and you will be able to open the cradle and remove the engine. Important side note here, on the underside of the locomotive you will find these plugs on the underside of the cab. Those are where the tender plugs into the engine. Now you can see there are speaker holes drilled into the underside of the tender there for a speaker, and I can't see if there is a speaker in there or not. No, there is no speaker. So the engine is DCC ready, so that means plug and play equipped with an 8 or 9 pin wiring harness. Excuse me. You already have space here in the tender, as you can see, for a speaker to make the installation process easier. Something else you will notice is the tender has electrical pickup capability. While we're looking at the underside of the locomotive, you can see a air reservoir, an air piston, and various air brake and frame details all along the underside of the locomotive. You have a body mounted plastic magnetic knuckle coupler operating knuckle coupler. And then the underside of the locomotive itself is pretty vanilla, standard fare. The locomotive and tender are held together with a drawbar, and there is a deck plate. I take that back, there's not a deck plate. There are 2 holes on this drawbar. The tender pin here just slides into the hole. Nothing complicated. If you want the tender to sit tighter to the locomotive, and you have the luxury of larger, more broad curves, then you just put this little pin in this hole right here. I have it on this far back hole, so that the locomotive can operate on the Stars Hollow Railroad. So, starting out on the front end of the fireman side of the locomotive, you see this nice bell, separately applied bell. It does rotate, as you can see here. You have non-operating classification lights here and also on the engineer side as well. You have this really sharp looking separately applied grab iron hand railing that goes all the way down the length of the boiler back to the cab. You have some cast on piping details along the edge of the boiler and cast on boiler jacket band detailing along the boiler. You have a separately applied steam whistle here. You've got a separately applied coupler cut lever. Now, as you can see here, it does move, but obviously it's not an operating cut lever. Some nice silver caps painted on the ends of the pistons here. You have this piping, separately applied piping detail right in here, and the valve gear and valve train side rod assembly looks first rate. It's chemically darkened metal. And of course the air compressor for the locomotive is right here. Moving farther back towards the cab of the locomotive, you have a very nicely done classification marking, which is legible. A very nicely done 2319. You have some window glazing right here on this front window. The cab has 2 of these little ventilation hatches up top. They do not move. They're cast onto the roof of the cab. Very nice cast on piping detailing here along the firebox, as well as the rivet detail along the firebox, and some pretty good truck detailing on this rear truck. Oh, and you have the steam turbo generator and the steam pop-off valves, which are separately applied, and more cast on piping detail here back towards the cab. Looking at the tender on the fireman's side, you have a very nicely done Rock Island Herald. Rivet detailing cast onto the body of the tender. A nice exposed frame, and of course appropriate frictionless bearing locomotive truck tenders. You've got this cast on stirrup step here and here, as well as polling pockets along the frame of the tender. and a coal load, plastic cast on coal load. And of course the rear operating magnetic knuckle coupler. Here we are looking at the front of the locomotive. You can see a little bit better that's bell. The non-operational classification lights here and here. You have a very nice 2319 number plate, legible and very well done. You have very nice detailing, obviously all cast on, but very nice detailing here on the front of the smoke box of the locomotive, as well as a better shot of the pilot with the see-through cow catcher. And of course you have the steps here on the sides of the pilot for someone to be able to climb onto the locomotive, or for a brakeman to ride along on the front of the engine. Looking inside the cab, we can see there is a little bit of cast-on detailing. You can see some gauges, some piping detailing, and firebox door detailing, as well as over there towards the right what appears to be some kind of brake detail. There's not a whole lot going on in the cab. I will say that you have the window glazing there on the rear windows of the cab, but there's the cab. Looking at the front of the tender, you have this little slot here for a fireman to be able to stick the shovel underneath, the scoop underneath the boards. These are cast on, but they are molded to simulate heavy timbers to obviously keep the coal in place in the tender box. And you have a flat plastic, very basic tender deck, as well as these separately applied hand railings on either side of the tender, here and here. I haven't disconnected the tender from the locomotive because those wires, y'all, are a pain in the butt to insert and extract. And these sausages that I call fingers are used to working with O-gauge trains, and additionally, this is, yes, a loaner, so I'm going to minimize handling as much as possible to include the risk of breaking small, hard to see and solder wires. Looking along the top side of the locomotive, you see it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There is not a whole lot going on the top of the locomotive in the way of intricate detailing. Now, you do have this headlight here on the rear of the tender. I believe that works. We'll see here momentarily whenever we get to the run portion of this review, but I do believe that works. There are wires leading to it. You have some nice rivet detailing here on the back deck of the truck, or excuse me, tender rather, and a cast on water hatch on the rear of the tender. This coal load irritates me a little bit. Were this my locomotive, that coal load would get covered over with some with a mixture of fine and medium coarse cinder ballast to tamp down the shininess of the coal. You have some nice rivet detailing along the top of the cab roof, as well as those opening, well, cast on open hatches on the roof that I was talking about. On the the engineer's side of the locomotive, you can see it's largely the same as the fireman's side. However, there is no air compressor. You have your main reservoir, what looks to be an air piston of some variety. You have some additional piping detailing here, and some more piping detailing underneath the walkway alongside of the smoke or firebox rather. The side rods and valve train are all going to be the same on this side of the engine. And you can see the same truck detailing. The tender on the engineer's side looks 100% identical to the tender on the fireman's side. Here on the rear of the tender, you have a separately applied metal ladder leading up to the rear deck of the tender. You've got this separately applied grab iron here, as well as here and here. There is no pilot on the rear of the tender, and you can see there is a better shot of the rear operating plastic knuckle coupler.